All right, g'day, Spuddies. We're here with one of my heroes, a guy that I've followed for quite a while. His name is Tim Kaufman. Kaufman or Kaufman?
Kaufman, yeah.
Kaufman, all right. Sorry, I should have known that before I started. His name is Tim Kaufman, and he runs the website fatmanrants.com. And I have been following that website since before I did my Spud Fit Challenge. So, yeah, it's good to finally get Tim on to talk with me. I've been on Tim's channel before, but now it's Tim's turn on mine. So thanks for joining us, Tim. And for those of my followers who don't know your story, could you tell us a little bit about what life was like a few years ago for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. And more importantly, thank you for everything that you do. You're one of my heroes as well. And it's so cool to see you helping all these people. And so I really appreciate that. As far as my life goes, a few years ago, it was pretty bad. I tell people that I don't think, I was suicidal, but at the same time, there was a lot of mornings that I didn't know if I'd wake up, and I don't really know if I cared. At the very worst, I was over 400 pounds. I was addicted to fentanyl and painkillers, alcoholic, and fast food. And my life just I feel like I woke up one day and that's, it all happened.
That's yeah, I often talk about how my life was in bad shape and how things were going downhill for me before I did my thing, and then I listened to your story that you briefly described then, and guys like David Clark and various other people, and then that makes me think, wow, in comparison, my life was pretty good, really. I didn't have that much to complain about, but which is, that's one of the reasons I look up to you, that you've come, to me, it seems to me like you've come along a lot further than I have. So I think I can learn a lot from people like you as well.
Well, the funny thing about that, we all do this. It's all the same process. And, it doesn't matter if someone has 20 pounds to lose or no weight to lose. To transform your life, it's all the same steps. It's all the same process. And that's what's cool about this. It doesn't, the starting line doesn't matter. It really doesn't. We all start at different spots, but it's the process that gets us to where we need to be. And so sometimes I have to deal with that a lot, especially in my classes. Well, I have nowhere near the weight to lose, maybe somebody has 50 pounds to lose or whatever. It's the same exact thing. So the steps that you had to take, the steps that I took, the steps that David Clark took, they're all the same process,
Yeah, I love how you refer to the process there, because I'm often and constantly, really, I'm telling people who are doing the Spud Fit Challenge and other things that people come to me and say, I want to lose 30 pounds, I want to lose 100 pounds, I want to lose whatever. And I'm constantly reminding people that it doesn't matter in the end what you want to lose. It doesn't matter. The process is the same, and you just got to keep on focusing on that process. So, if you get the process right and you can stick with it 100%, then the results are inevitable. But if you're focused on the results, then that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily get the process right. So, yeah, it's sort of chicken type of scenario.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And, the thing is, by not focusing on the results, they take care of themselves anyways. If you just, grind out the process, and the only difference between losing 200 pounds and 50 pounds or wherever you're coming from is just a matter of time. It takes your body to catch up with your mind. That's really all it is.
Yeah, well, that's another way to put it. I've often said, if you get the internal side of things right, then the external will reflect what is happening internally. And yeah, that's another way to say it. I love that. So let's take a little backward step then. Was there a moment in your life where you can remember? I'm sure there were lots of moments throughout your history where you thought, oh, that's enough. I'm going to try a new diet and whatever. And I'm going to try this new exercise program or this new eating plan or whatever, and most of the time they fail and you go back to your old ways. Was there a moment where you remember things clicking in a different way to what they hadn't before, and a moment that you felt, oh, this time it feels different? Was there, can you describe that?
So actually, my story is super weird like this. I did one round of like the Atkins diet, which would now I guess you'd call keto. But see, I had built this perfect little shelter because I was born with a genetic joint disease, and we found out in my early 20s that I have a disease called Ehlers-Danlos. So basically, my whole body dislocates. And it got to the point where I would sneeze and my shoulder would actually pop out of the socket just from the pressure of sneezing.
Wow.
So, I mean, I was super active. I played football, but I was always getting hurt. But the thing that kind of happened for me that might be a little different from most people is that once I started listening to the doctors, I in my 20s, I already had like massive amounts of arthritis. They were already talking about replacing my knees in my 20s, but none of the doctors would do it because there was nothing to attach to. So it was, they couldn't fix why the joint was wearing out. If the joint was just worn out, they could replace it. But there would nothing would be there to hold the new joint in. So, and the doctor said, I remember him saying this, it will be a waste of titanium. Yeah. So what the protocol is to keep your body as quiet as you can. So things like don't ever let my arms hang out of a chair. Always make sure that everything's supported. A lot of casts and, crutches, and just keep weight off. So I wasn't like crazy overweight when the doctor started telling me this. And then the other thing that I walked away from, because I had chronic pain with the chronic inflammation, are the painkillers. So I started like what people will call like normal painkillers, like Lortabs and stuff like that. And then the more I took them, the more I needed. And, fast forward 10 years, and I went from like Percocets to Oxycontin all the way up to the fentanyl. And when that wasn't enough, I started drinking, massive amounts of alcohol because I was, justifiably in pain. I had a real problem, and I hid behind a lot of it too. So the reason why I put weight on is because I got, not only less active, but I was always looking for an escape. And I got that same like warm feeling out of a cheeseburger as I did the opioids. That gave me that same, that temporary comfort. It was so short. It was almost like identical to the opioids.
Yeah,
I get the, yeah. I mean, you get the build up, you get the excitement of waiting in the line, then you finally get, the fix, and then you eat it, and it's gone, and the whole cycle starts over.
Yeah, and it's always disappointing too. It's like, this is going to be so good. This is going to be so good. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. And then you eat it, and it's great while you're eating it, and everything's good, and it's like it's everything you want it to be. And as soon as you swallow the last bite, it's over. It's like, oh, damn.
Yeah, there it goes. And then you start the guilt process for me, because I'd want to hide all the wrappers in the garbage can so my wife wouldn't see how many I was eating. And then you got the whole guilt thing going. Then it seems like a half an hour later, you forgot all that stuff and you just do the same process over.
Yeah. Oh, I used to hide everything as well and try to make it so that nobody would know. But God, we were a couple of morons, weren't we? It was pretty obvious. So we stored the evidence in our bodies very well.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, and I got really creative too, because instead of hiding all the evidence, I'd go get 3 burgers and I'd save one wrapper out, just so it didn't look like I was eating all 3. You know what? Honestly, it is a lot of work to be an addict. It really is a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know?
It's weird, because until I had this epiphany one day that I was a food addict, I never thought about it that way. But yeah, then once I realized that I was a food addict, then I started reading. I didn't know about food addictions, but I started reading about other kinds of addictions to see, if I actually was an addict. Then all of these stories that you're talking about hiding stuff and about, telling stories that are different to what you're actually doing. And that one where you mentioned getting 3 burgers and only keeping 1 wrapper was, another typical thing I would do as well. And it was just suddenly reading stories about alcoholics and heroin addicts and things like that was like, it's all the same. I'm doing all the same stuff that these people are, who are, horrible, supposed to be according to society. Anyway, I shouldn't say that they are horrible people. They're not horrible people, but society paints them in that way. And I'm doing all the same stuff, and that was a real eye opener for me.
And I think that sometimes that even makes the food addiction harder, because when we look at an alcoholic or a heroin addict, you get that societal, stereotype that they're just scum. But being a food addict is not only acceptable, but it's promoted. Everything you see on TV, every sign you see, is promoted. Imagine if we did that with heroin. Every time you turn on TV, you see needles and spoons. That'll be crazy.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it hard. It's not only acceptable, but it's promoted.
Yeah, that's actually, I hadn't thought about it that way before. I have thought about it that it's acceptable. Like, I think food addiction is the most common form of addiction out there. So it's obvious, like, there are you just got to walk down any main street and you can see that there are many, many people that are addicted to food. But I never thought about it until you just said it then, about that it's promoted. And you're right, it is. Everywhere you look, there is advertising and promotion of all of these addictive foods that are causing massive troubles. So, huge problem.
So back to the original question. So I never did this thing where I'd gain weight and try to lose weight. I kind of rested on the fact that this is what it was supposed to be. This is what the doctors told me it was supposed to be. I mean, they never told me about the weight, but I can remember my wife, and actually I just thought of this for the first time in ever. I can remember my wife going into the doctor one time, and she said, "Don't you think he should start doing at least some exercise?" And I can remember the doctor almost scolding her and saying, "No, he has limited, joint life left, and you need to conserve everything you can." I remember, and, it's funny because now that I say that, I also remember her asking about the painkillers. Isn't he taking too many? And I can remember the doctor saying, he's human. He doesn't want to be in pain. And that's why he's taking them. So I knew my weight was a problem, but I never did this up and down. It kind of all just slid so fast, and I put my weight on super fast.
Sorry.
No, I'm just guessing. Like I would have to go back and look, but the weight when I got into the alcohol more, that just kind of shut the switch off, and I stopped caring about everything. And that's when the weight really came back on. I'm probably thinking, within 6 years, I made it up over 400. We don't know how much over 400 because they couldn't weigh me.
Yeah, right. Wow. So rather than being someone like me who was a constant battle of losing a bit of weight, putting more on, losing a bit, you were sort of more in the mindset where it was your lot in life to be overweight, and you just were sort of trying to accept that for most of the time, and just trying to settle into this idea that there was nothing you could do about it. So just try to make the best of a bad situation, sort of thing. Is that the situation you were in?
Yeah. Other than one time when I was starting a new career in teaching. So that would have been about 13 years ago. I did the Atkins diet, and I lost like 60 or 70 pounds on that.
Yeah.
I'm eating all chicken wings. It was my dream diet, chicken wings, cheese, and bacon.
Yeah.
But then, when it came back on, man, and that honestly was probably the tipping point where I just plummeted. My weight just went crazy after that.
Yeah, right. It's like McDougall always says, people love to hear good news about their bad habits. So as soon as someone tells you that you can lose weight eating bacon and chicken wings and cheese, then yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, I just did a talk last night, and it was a first class for a series of 6, And I asked the people, do diets work? And they all like, I tricked them because I know they all want to say no, but I'm like, no, diets work. There's a lot of ways to lose weight. The keto, the Atkins, all that kind of stuff. You can become an alcoholic. You can become sick. You can get chemotherapy. You can lose a limb. There's a ton of ways to lose weight, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about gaining health, and the weight loss is a symptom of that. And that's a shift that people have to start seeing. It's not losing weight. That's not the issue. It's gaining health, and everything else will fall into place.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I always say, people always, when people talk to me about what happened with me, it's always people want to focus on the weight loss. And I've always got to remind people that, yeah, the weight loss is nice. I'm definitely not complaining about the weight loss, but the best part about the whole situation for me is how I feel inside, and my mental health. And the weight loss is just a side effect. It happened because I focused on the process, like we talked about earlier. And I focused on getting healthy, and I focused on controlling my psychology, and then the weight loss just happened by itself after that.
Right, for sure.
So what was your initial steps then? And how did it come to this point where you thought, well, tried keto, it didn't work, and you sort of settled into this idea that you're stuck with being overweight and your joints don't work? And this is the thing I admire most about you, that you're stuck with a body that doesn't work the way it should, but you do a lot more with it than most people would dream of. So, how does it all come about that that you go from just being accepting of your fate as being unhealthy and overweight and nothing you can do about it? What brought about the change?
So I think everybody wants that one thing, and I kind of wish I had that, but I don't think that's exactly what happened. It was kind of a series of things, and some of the things that happened, I kind of they're hard to talk about. But so life is moving on, and
I don't want you to talk about things you're uncomfortable with.
Well, no, but I mean, it's I go back there a lot because I have to, because if it helps people, I'm all for it. But I think if I put it like in an outline form, the first thing that happened to me, the first shift, was finding gratitude. And my wife's mom, super awesome lady. We're high school sweethearts, so our families were kind of like, her mom was a second mom to me, and vice versa. And she got diagnosed with leukemia. She was a hardworking lady. She loved life. And so we ended up going into the hospital like every single night to be with her, And, at the same time, we're dealing with all that stuff, and the chemotherapy and the radiation and the, the blood transfusions, like almost daily blood transfusions. At the same time we're dealing with that, my father, who was my best friend in the whole world, was diagnosed with kidney cancer, and it was stage 4. And when he left the doctor's office, they gave him 6 months to live. And so through all of that, I started seeing like the one moment I went up to see her mom, and she was struggling to try to live through the night. And I can remember she opened her eyes up when I got there, real slow, and she's like, "How's your knee?" And it crushed me. I mean, it shows you what an awesome lady she is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, who do I think I am for complaining about my knee? I mean, she's trying to live until tomorrow. And yeah, my legs are screwed up, but there's people in the hospital that are getting limbs lobbed off because there's tumors in them. And I get to go home tonight. And it was the first time that I ever started seeing that, like, and I can remember thinking, man, I wish I could trade places with her so she could live in them. And I'm thinking, maybe life isn't as bad as I'm making it. And so what that started doing is it started helping me focus on things that I did have instead of everything I wanted. I still had a family that loved me. I still had a good job. I still was able to get around. It wasn't easy, but I could do it. And I still had, air in my lungs, and I had no chemo running through my veins. So I think the first thing that happened was I found gratitude. And then something else hit me. I wanted to go for a bariatric surgery, and I was all set up to do it. My doctor just had to sign the papers. But I was so sick that he wouldn't sign off on it. My blood pressure was 255 over 115 usually. And the day I went in there to have him sign off on it, my resting heart rate was 125. And he said, you're going to have a stroke right here in my office. So he made me lay down and breathe, real deep and stuff. And we kind of negotiated. He wasn't going to let me go home until it was 100. I kind of talked him into like 110, 115. But he was also worried about the massive amounts of drugs I was on. What are they going to do after they do surgery? And then the third thing he was super worried about is if I lost a massive amount of weight, he was really worried that my, joints would just collapse and I'd end up in a wheelchair. And it's weird because we went back and interviewed him 2 years ago. And he said that every 30 days I came into his office and I wasn't in a wheelchair, he was like shocked. Like he just knew that I was going to be in a wheelchair the next time I was coming in to see him. So, my dreams of this bariatric surgery, and I had watched videos and I saw all this really, super inspiring videos about it. And I just felt like all my hope was just gone right there. And I can remember thinking maybe I should just go find another doctor because I was really good at that. Like, they'd say, hey, you need to be on metformin. I'm like, okay, I'll be back. And then I'd never go back because my sugar was so high. But at any rate, the other thing that I think another shift happened after I found gratitude was this idea that I had always asked, like I would always ask God for these huge miracles. Like, and, I started thinking about it, that all this stuff that I was asking for that maybe I already had, we want this like strength, this magical strength all the time to, endure something or whatever. But, what if I already had that and I just wasn't implementing it? What if this whole thing was an excuse? Just because I wanted something that I didn't have, but I really had it and I just was too lazy to use it. So what I started doing,
it sounds like you were already using that amazing strength. That the way your life was at that point in time, things were not good for you, and to be able to at that point still get up out of bed and go on and go to work and go and support your mother-in-law in hospital and go and do these things, I feel like that takes a massive amount of strength anyway. So yeah, whether you knew it or not at the time, you were already exhibiting huge strength, and maybe you just needed to redirect the strength to other areas or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's actually funny you say that because Heather tells me that a lot. She because you look, and you have to do this too. You look at your picture from a few years ago and you're like, I don't even remember that. Like I'll pull a pair of pants out that are size 52 and I'm like, I don't ever remember. And I'd had squeeze into them. But Heather, so I always chalk it up to that. But Heather always says, you always tried to do what you could. You always tried to work. They handed me disability papers so many times, and I was not going to not work. But it took all I could do just to, even because I used to have a very physical job. And then when I went into teaching, obviously it's non-physical. So, but even that was a lot just to get into my office and get into my truck and get back home. So yeah, there might be something to that. But I think when you start having a grateful attitude, that the asking stuff goes away and you get the thanking, and if you can be thankful for stuff, it's really hard to have a bad day. It really is.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful lesson too, and it's something that came a bit later for me. So like for you, the gratitude came first. For me, it was, I had this idea of addiction. I've got to quit food and I'm just going to eat only potatoes, and that was my plan. And then, I found myself further down the track when I was, after a week or so of only potatoes, when I was you know, the first 2 weeks were really hard, and I found myself getting angry that I would put myself in this position where I couldn't allow myself to enjoy my favorite stuff anymore, which was all the junk foods that I used to like, and it made me angry. And then that was when I thought, well, you know, actually I've got a lot of other stuff that I can enjoy. I don't have to just enjoy food and that's it. I can find something else to enjoy. And that was when the gratitude came, that I started being thankful that there was other things that I could do. And yeah, that was yeah, different order that things happened, I guess. But yeah, it was a very important part of my journey as well. It just happened at a different stage. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically what I started doing is I knew if I couldn't get the surgery, I had to lose weight. So I think I did what everyone does. You know, I started restricting calories. The one thing that probably helped me the most, you know, I had zero fitness. Like I was hardly even mobile. And there were days that I literally could hardly get out of bed. But what I could do, I knew I could do a little bit more. So I kept a journal, which was super weird for me. Like I never wrote anything down. I'll probably laugh at people that kept a journal, and I don't know what made me want to keep a journal. But I wrote down, you know, in the morning, I wrote down that I had a little incident at work. I went to get out of my office chair, and I used to push down so hard on the handles that I broke both handles right off my chair.
I've done that.
I was so embarrassed, and one of my colleagues brought me a new chair right away, and he gave me his chair, and he felt, because he knew how embarrassed I was. But that next day I said, you know what, if I can get out of the chair once, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to get back up. And you know, to a lot of people that sounds ridiculous, but that was my first exercise. And
I love that. I've heard you talk about that before, and I just love it that it can start so simply. Like, people want to get into all these amazing gym programs and boot camps and find a personal trainer, and you know, that's all good. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I've often told people just start as simple as you can, and that simple act of just get up, sit down, get up again. It's like, what could be more simple? Just take it back to as basic as you possibly can. I love it.
Yeah, well, because that was my limit. Like that, it was hard for me to get out of a chair. So if I could do it twice, you know, I was doubling my activity. And, you know, every day I would just pick something, you know, I could get up about 3 stairs and I'd have to stop. And I knew that. So I would count the stairs. I would try to get up 5 steps without stopping. And then a few days later, and, you know, people must have thought I was a moron, you know, getting up, sitting down, getting up, you know, going, they must have thought I had OCD or something. But, so little by little, I just started doing, you know, and that's where that mantra comes from, just a little bit more than I had done the day before. And then I was watching Netflix one day, and Joe Cross's Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead came up in my queue. And I had no idea what it was. None. Like my upbringing, we spent our life in the woods hunting and making sausage. We used to make 300 pounds of sausage on the weekend. You know, we used to grow all our own meat, our cows, pigs. We had all that stuff because I grew up on a farm. And, you know, we never bought meat at the store. We always, you know, I live in farm country. So, but the thing is, I was intrigued by the title, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And, you know, I told people the other night, I'm like, if Joe Cross would have been putting raccoon poop in that juicer, I wouldn't have cared. I would have done what he did because I wanted what he had, you know. So by accident, I end up on this juice fast, and that would have been about a little over 5 years ago. And so I went 30 days on nothing but juice, you know, fruit and vegetable juice. And the first 3 days were crazy hard. I had to learn a lot. Stupid stuff. I was still chewing tobacco and, you know, on all the medicine, all this crazy stuff while I'm drinking kale juice. But again, I didn't know what nutrients were. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. I just know that Joe did it. He lost 60 pounds. He got off almost all his medicine, and that's what I wanted to do. So I can remember the 5th day of the juice fast. I'll never forget this. I woke up in the morning in the same place I had went to bed. And that was like life-changing. That's like, Like that was absolutely life changing. And then, you know, as the month
hadn't been tossing
progressed,
and turning during the night.
yeah, well, that's why I was doing all the pills and the alcohol, because you know, people don't understand it. And I could very easily be on the other side of this microphone advocating for pain management and stuff, because I know what it's like. I know what it's like. There's a difference if you hurt yourself and you're in pain, right? And there's also a difference if you go a night or two without sleep, you're tired. But when every day you wake up with the same pain you go to bed in, and just day after day of not getting a night's sleep, it changes the chemistry in your brain. You become someone that you're not. And there's no way to explain that unless you live it. So I could very easily be on the other side of this mic if I hadn't found plant-based. I will be arguing with everyone.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's hell. It's being in hell. But at any rate, it was the first time that I had woke up, because every night was just a chore. Night times were, I hated night times. And that's when I would literally drink an entire liter of vodka like 2 minutes before I went to bed. That was the last thing I did. So yeah, so at my worst, I was on the maximum dose of fentanyl. I would easily take 15, pills before bed and then chase it down with an entire liter of vodka. And that was not a once in a while thing. That was my every single night. That's what I did. But to wake up and just like get a rest, like it was the most amazing thing ever. And then as it progressed, I'd forget to take my medicine. I would get bored sitting on the couch, but I also knew that juicing isn't sustainable for the rest of my life. So as the story, unrolls, because I watched that, then Forks Over Knives came up in my queue. And to me, Forks Over Knives, I told everyone I could tell that had anything to do with that film that movie didn't just save my life, it gave me a completely new one. I was so angry. I was so angry at the end of that. Because I had just lost two of my most important people in the world to cancer. And then I see Dr. Campbell telling us that he can turn on and off cancer. And I can remember finishing it up and I'm like, either this movie is total BS or somebody needs to go to jail.
Yeah.
I was so mad. I was so mad. But, as the first time I've ever done this, before the credits rolled, I started the entire film over and I watched the whole thing twice. And like I say, that to me, that saved my life. I didn't have all the tools and the groups and all that. I wasn't really active on Facebook. So all I had was the films. But I got enough information out of them that I knew that whatever I was putting in the juicer, I'm going to start eating that.
Yeah.
And so from there.
Order, just by chance, I guess, that you saw those films too. Because, I think Joe Cross's Juice Fast it's a great film, first of all. And it's also a really great way, I think, to transition to the whole food plant-based diet in a similar way that, my Spuds Only thing was always intended as a way, let's eat Spuds Only if I can stick to Spuds Only, then I can surely stick to a whole food plant-based diet once that's finished. So that's what it was all about. And the juice fasting is I think a similar idea. If you can make yourself stick to a juice fast for 30 days, then, sticking to a good, healthy, whole food plant-based diet after that's going to be, you can definitely do that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
How perfect those two films back to back.
Yeah, definitely a ton of similarities, which we'll probably talk about in a few minutes. Now, I think the Spud Fit Challenge was a lot easier, but the one huge similarity that they have is there's no thinking.
Yeah.
Like there's no deciding. If you're hungry, you have a juice. If you're hungry, you have a potato. There's no decision making. It totally takes it off the table. And I think that's why both of them are super successful mentally, even more than the physical thing. Now, for me, the condition that I was in, what was happening, and now I can look back and this is so easy to see, but I had no clue what was going on. But when my stomach shuts down for digestion, that gives me 30% more energy to start repairing my body. And even though I will never get rid of the EDS, what I didn't know again at the time was I was eating an anti-inflammatory diet, which no one had ever told me about. I had all these problems and no one ever said, "Hell, I used to, every 30 days, it was the first Tuesday of the month, I would go to a doctor and they would drain my knees out. And they would take massive amounts of fluid off both every 30 days. That was my date night with Heather. They go freeze my kneecaps, pull all this fluid out, dump it in the garbage. I mean, that's what they did every Tuesday for years. And no one ever told me that, maybe it's the dairy, maybe it's the meat, maybe it's the oil, But what happened is once the inflammation started leaving my body, I was in less pain. And what I found out that the joint damage sure was causing some pain, but the inflammation around it was really lighting everything up and giving me all the nerve. They were going to do nerve blocks on me. I was going to get a TENS unit installed in my back. They were fusing my ankles together. Like, what a mess. But so I didn't know it at the time, but all that juice, all those nutrients, so basically I was mainlining them right into my veins, was healing me so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so from there, I just kept following the breadcrumbs and learning more and learning more. And at the same time, I'm also trying to walk. And my first walk was, it took me over an hour to walk 3/4 of a mile. And I almost ended up in the hospital. We packed my knees in ice when I came home. But for some reason, I wanted to go back to the trail and finish that mile. And, since then, then my wife and I, we started walking together. Then I started hiking. From there, we did a Tough Mudder. And then, we moved on. I wanted to climb a mountain. That was another big one for me. And I can remember telling my buddy that I wanted to climb a high peak in the Adirondacks. And he kind of, he didn't laugh at me, but he's like, "Oh, go ahead, do that." And I had a goal to do it in a year. Yeah. And so I went back to my stairs, and I knew that I didn't have any mountains around my house, but I knew that stairs would give me that same effect. But the problem is the braces that I was in, they had my knees locked. So I couldn't bend my knees on purpose. So I went to the doctors and they decided to cast my legs and then send them out to California, and they made me custom braces that could actually bend.
All right.
So I started doing stairs. They were really expensive too, but I started doing stairs, and I'd count, I'd do 20 stairs and then 25 and then 30. And before I knew it, I would lose track of what 100 I was on. And I started using a watch. So I would do like an hour just walking up and down stairs. And it took me 2 tries, but about a year later, I ended up, I think it was an 8-mile hike. And I ended up, I'm pretty sure it was almost 3,000 feet of climb. And it was terrible. I was still pretty big. I probably was well over 300 pounds at that point, and my body was not really, I was very shaky on my knees, but I made it. So that's another one of those tipping points that said, you know what, maybe stuff I thought was impossible maybe isn't.
Yeah, I've just had shivers down my spine through that whole story, just to think that, you started struggling to get out of your chair. And it's an incredible story, I think, of perseverance and just surrendering to the process of just making progress one day after the other. Like you always say, do a little bit more than you did yesterday. And yeah, if you can do that every day, just do one more step. It doesn't take long till you're climbing a mountain. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and it's not that, the step doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be what you can get done as long as you have that movement. And so from there, I'm going to fast forward really quick because this stuff's kind of boring. But so we did a Tough Mudder, and, my legs kind of wanted to go faster than my mind was letting them go. So I asked my wife, I'm like, do you want to run a 5K? And she's like, isn't that like a marathon or something? And I'm like, I think, but we should at least try. And that's always been my favorite finish line. I never even knew what a race bib was, or, you know, none of that stuff. And we crossed the finish line. It was a lot of work, but we crossed the finish line, and people thought there was actually like a tragedy happened, because I was just sobbing. Like I couldn't believe that I ran, you know, 5 kilometers. And so on the way home, I said, hey, we should try 10K. And she's like, no way. And so like 2 months later, we ran our first 10K together. And then she thought it was crazy to do a half marathon, but my first half marathon, I ran with a legal handicap parking pass around my waist. And I taped, I knew it was going to be hard. So I taped my dad's picture and her mom's picture on the back, and then a picture of my family. And I ran 13.1 miles with that thing, and it was a hard day. But legally, I could have parked in a handicap spot, and that was the last month that was valid.
So great. More shivers down my spine. It's just, it's just amazing to get from that to now, you know, training for ultra marathons and crazy things like that. It's, you know, it's just a testament to the human spirit, so to say, that, you know.
So I'll skip all but marathons and stuff. And, you know, now Heather's running marathons with me, and
she's a legitimate beast of an athlete herself now, isn't she?
She is. Well, she comes in a small package, so she's pretty quick, you know. And I can't wait to see what happens, because this is all new to. I mean, we didn't even, you know, buy a pair of running shoes till we were in our 40s. You know, we've only been doing this a couple of years, so I can't wait to see where she goes. She signed up for a 50-miler as well in October, so. Yeah, that one's got a lot of hills, though.
Oh, you guys, it's good to. I enjoy following you guys as well, because you're just so supportive of each other and so good for each other, and you just boost each other up constantly, and it's so good to see.
But you know what though? I just did a little talk on this the other day. That works the other way too, and because people use that for an excuse all the time with me. Well, if my wife would do this, or my husband would do this, whatever, I'd be on board, but it's too hard without them. And I'm not knocking Heather at all. If you follow us on Facebook, you know, we're pretty close. We were always close. And we were close when we were 15 years old. But you look at a picture of us, and I think we've lost 285 pounds together. So you look at a picture of the drastic difference between us then and now. And I tell people, I'm like, you see the fat pictures, we were a team. We did everything together. We ate together. We sat on the couch together. We planned where we were getting pizza together, and we planned where we were going out to eat together. We did that together. And the thing is, now we do a lot of stuff together too, but that team thing can go two ways. We have twice as many chances to succeed this way, but we also have twice as many chances to fail. And that's critical, because there's days she wakes up and it's bitter cold and she's like, yeah, no. And it's easy for me to say, yeah, I don't want to either. And vice versa. I probably do that more than she does, to be honest. But the other thing too is, I was plant-based for about 3 years before she hopped on board. She's been plant-based for about 2 years. And, you know, we didn't even know she was overweight, and here she loses 85 pounds. But she went plant-based because of a medical problem that she ran into. And when she got admitted to the hospital, all these floods from dealing with her mom came back. And she got out of the hospital and she goes, I will never go back in the hospital. And she flipped the switch and she became, she's more strict than I am. Like, I'll eat something. She's like, you know, that has salt on it, right? So but she's 100% for her health, not the scale. But it shows you that the progression wasn't just, oh, we both up and decided this. I ate baked sweet potatoes. Well, they had pizza and chicken wings next to me. I mean, I did it for 3 years, and I think that actually helped me. It made me stronger. But people use it as an excuse, and I can't stand that. I can't stand it. I love having her by my side, and she loves having me by her side, but we both are responsible for our individual health. And you know what? It's no different. I'm sorry, I'm preaching here, but
keep going. I love it.
it's no different than a marriage. If you go into a marriage and you just want to ride the marriage train because your spouse is doing this and everything's acceptable and you guys get along, your marriage isn't going to last long. But it's the same as marriage. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put 100% in to make myself as good as I can for you. And then if we do that together, we're unstoppable.
Yeah.
But we both have to have responsibility for our own actions and then our together actions. And that's huge.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. Your own little mini episode of excuse smashers there, I reckon. Which, by the way, everyone watching should go and check out Tim's Fat Man Rants Excuse Smashers series. They're brilliant. Yeah, every week or every few weeks.
So the bottom line is, I did. Sorry about that. So, anyways, I got into biking. I learned how to swim. I did half Ironman, couple marathons. We did a 50K trail race together, and so now I'm gonna take a swing at a 50-mile ultra. But I almost hate talking about that stuff. But how this started, this is going back about a half an hour question you asked me before, is the process. So I found gratitude. I started being thankful. I stopped asking and started thanking. Then I found plants, and then I started doing a little bit more, and then I found the plants. But I started this. I never wanted to lose weight. And I honestly never even wanted to get healthy. The reason why I wanted to change is because I wanted to live one more year. And the only reason why I wanted to stay alive one more year is so Heather didn't have to bury me. I literally wanted to put enough space in between all the 2 funerals that we had to just plan. I wanted to get enough space in between there that she could kind of heal up. I never intended any of this stuff to happen, and I just followed the process. I took people's advice, and here we are. And I wouldn't trade our lives for anything. We have such an awesome life. Like every morning I get up. I told you when we started that there were nights that I would fall asleep. I didn't know if I was getting up, and I don't know if I cared. I can't sleep past 5 a.m. Like 4:50, I'm up. I can't wait to start a new day. I can't wait to see what's out there. And that one feeling alone for one day is worth all the pain that I went through.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. That's a mind-blowing story to me. And it's a really, really powerful way to finish it, I think. But before we do finish, we've already talked longer than I planned on, but that's okay. I love talking to you. I could talk all day. But just before we wrap it up, though, you've recently done a month of my Spud Fit Challenge, or your Spud Fit Challenge, I should say. You've recently done a month of that, so I just wanted to hear your thoughts about how a month of eating only potatoes went for you.
Okay, so I'm gonna be totally transparent and honest. I think hopefully you agree that I think I came into this challenge in a little different place than a lot of people come.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I kind of knew that coming into it. So I had a lot of fun, honestly, being in the group and just kind of taking a backseat and just watching. I thought that was really neat to see people, and it was probably good that I did that. For the most part, some people might not relate to where I was coming from. So here's a few examples. The first thing I noticed when I did it, I was super thirsty. And it was funny because I was watching everyone in the group, and most of them, they're like, man, I have to pee every 15 minutes. And I'd see somebody say, well, that's because you're not used to such water-dense food. So for me, that was probably the most, lacking water food that I have eaten in a long time, because I eat a lot of apples and peppers and onions, very, very water dense stuff. So
like potatoes are high water content when you compare them to like bread and pizza and things like that. But yeah, when you compare them to fruits and green leafy vegetables and things like that, then they're a bit lower. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. And like I kind of knew ahead of time this stuff was going to happen. So this is really gross, but like I usually make like four good bowel movements every day, and the potatoes like kind of stopped me up a little bit because my body wasn't used to it.
Yeah.
But overall, in as far as nutritionally too, if you look like on the Andy scale, most of the food that I eat, or at least I eat a lot of potatoes. That I found after Forks Over Knives, I was doing like the greens and stuff, and I was always hungry. So when I bumped into Dr. McDougall's stuff, I went all in potatoes, and potatoes are how I lost a majority of my weight. And yeah, I think we're always kind of tweaking, and if we do it right, we should be. So potatoes, like, it's nothing for me and Heather to go through 50 pounds of potatoes in 3 weeks. Not on a potato diet, just normally. I mean, we eat a lot of potatoes. So it wasn't anything I wasn't used to, but so anyways, I kind of knew that kind of stuff was happening. But the reason why I did it is for the mental game. I love cashews, and I can't put them down. Like, I have a problem. I will always be a food addict. So if I'm going to buy cashews if I'm going to make a dressing out of them, I can only go get a cup of cashews, because if I get a pound, I'm going to eat a pound.
Yeah.
And I've learned, like, through my journey, I've learned that I don't do avocados anymore. There's nothing wrong with avocados, but I don't do them because I can't handle them. Same thing with coconut, same thing with the nuts and seeds. And I try to do a little bit.
Sort of plant foods there, that can be a problem. I'm the same. I avoid all that stuff as well, because I know I have them in the house. That's okay. But if I know that if I go and have one macadamia, it's going to be hard. I'm probably going to have 20 or 30 of them,
Yeah. But I mean, it's okay. I mean, like, I deal with it. So my point is, when I did the Spud Fit Challenge, I did it on purpose for the mental thing, to get back to that point where it was really cool. About first of all, the first maybe 4 or 5 days, I thought I was going to explode. And I think I messaged you, and you're like, to stay with the process, and it did. By about 5 days, everything kind of started moving through me, and I didn't feel like the Michelin Man. And I started feeling myself getting leaner. I didn't lose as much weight as I thought. I think I lost 7 pounds. But that's not. I was doing a ton of training, and that's the next thing. So I'm not gonna lie, when I do a lot of endurance training, just for the ease, if I'm gonna be out on a 100-mile bike ride, which I haven't done them in a while, but let's say if I'm gonna anything over 50 miles on my bike, I can't carry stuff with me. So I take the gels, the hammer gels. I try to get as clean ones as I can find, but I need fuel. And I need to get electrolytes back in me. And so I decided, if I'm doing the potato challenge, that there's none of that. No fuels, no gels, nothing. Right. So I was literally, my last weekend here, I ran 25 miles. And the next day I ran 8 miles, and I did it all on sweet potatoes.
Awesome.
So, yeah. And I didn't get dizzy. I felt, full, I didn't feel like I was, hallucinating or anything. So I was super impressed by that I could do that. So
they're athlete for sure.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I'm glad I did it. I definitely, the first day after the 30 days was up, the first day I think I took 6 potatoes to school.
Yeah.
So
people are I'm surprised by that. People go, "Oh, you must be so sick of potatoes," and I bet you don't eat them anymore. I'm like, nah, I eat probably as many potatoes as anyone in the world, I reckon, because my love for potatoes only grew.
The biggest thing for me, the biggest takeaway from it is learning when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
If you're not hungry enough to eat a potato, then you're not hungry. Yeah. It's so simple,
Yeah, and even occasionally I do a few days. I don't do only potatoes anymore. It's been a while since I've done that, but occasionally I do a few days of just potatoes here and there, and even I still have that. That it's I'm pretty good. I don't binge eat anymore, and my relationship with food is really good, and my weight is pretty consistently low now. But I actually don't weigh myself anymore, so I don't know what I weigh, but I know it's low because my skinny clothes all still fit really well. But the point I'm making is every now and then I just do a few days of potatoes just because I feel like I want the simplicity. and even I still have those moments where I think I want to eat now, and hang on, it's only potatoes. Am I hungry enough to eat a potato? Oh, not really. I'll leave
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
That's good. But it was a cool experience. I definitely want to do it again, like soon.
Cool. Cool. Well, it was good to have you on board with the Spud Fit Challenge, and yeah, obviously it's been a great chance to talk with you too, and hear about your life and your transition, and yeah, we've got some great insights to take away from that conversation. I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it too, and yeah, people that again who don't know, who haven't heard of you before, where can they find you to follow up more?
Well, I have my normal Facebook page is Tim Kaufman, but then I have fatmanrants.com. Pretty much website, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook are all fatmanrants.com.
Yeah.
But Instagram is mostly food. It's been mostly potatoes for a while, but my Instagram, I try to take a picture almost every day of like what I eat. I try to keep my food really simple.
Yeah.
It looks delicious, and sometimes the pictures are deceiving, but 3-4 ingredients. I eat a lot of the same foods, but they taste good. They're delicious, and it's great fuel. So Instagram is my food. I'm probably more active on my Facebook page than anything. So.
I love your Instagram page personally, and I love the way you write your recipes too. It's not. I'll let people look it up and see for themselves, but you're not your typical Instagram food person. The way you write your recipes, it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, no. All right, well, thanks, Tim. This has been awesome, and yeah, let's do it again sometime. And good luck with your running and all your crazy, awesome fitness feat that seem unthinkable only a few years ago.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching, everyone, as well, and Spud up.